Hello, I'm Katie Room from periapsispress.com, and David will be joining me in a minute, and as will C.S. Johnson. But first, I'm just going to really quick go through my indie news stuff for you guys today. Kitsunche has a new horror book out, Diary of a, I'm going to mispronounce this, I know it, Bomo? We reviewed Dawn of the Broken Sword. This is a different series. It might be even a standalone, but he just released it the other day, so I wanted to put it on your guys' radar. L.J. Lamplighter did a cover reveal for the 6th book in the Unexpected Enlightenment series. We reviewed the first one, and since we're talking about magic school stuff today, I thought that was kind of fun, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And then be on the lookout this week. I believe starts Wednesday is the big Black Friday book sale hosted by Hans. So if you guys haven't picked up some of the books that we've reviewed, this would be a great opportunity. And then just a little preview, I'm going to be doing a review of Sherlock Holmes and Carnegie by William Jeffrey Rankin. Really liked this one. It's kind of a mashup of Sherlock Holmes and Carnegie, who is an occult detective. Really enjoyed the horror scenes. There's a really great one where the beast is pacing around them. Really just some excellent chills. And Rankin is really good at the historical settings, which I noted in my review of
Wow.
Invocations of the Submortal. So that was really well applied here. And I think he does a good job of sort of mimicking like John Watson's style. And then I really liked the monster of this one as well. All right, that's all my front matter. So I'm going to bring in C.S. Johnson. Hello. I think you're
okay. Hello. Hi, everybody. It's me again.
We reviewed the first book in the Divine Space Pirates trilogy from you. And I saw on your Twitter that you were going to be running a Kickstarter soon as well.
Oh, yes. I like to say I'm a one-woman Netflix. And, I just got to push it out. And
And did you just finish another crowdfunding campaign, or is that one still going?
Oh, okay. So I did finish my Starlight Chronicles special anniversary edition. Thank you for asking. Yay. I actually am sending out the books soon. I ordered all of them so I could sign them and make them all pretty before I mail them out to everybody. But if anybody would like to get them anyway, they're actually on my Ko-fi page as an exclusive. If anybody wants to see what that looks like, I'll send you a link. But yeah, I got another one starting up in January, probably end of January this week. I'm trying to do a comic. I really am one of the worst sort of writers, I think, because people are like, look at this stupid thing over here. And I'm like, oh, why is that stupid thing so popular? I could write a better version of that stupid thing. So this one in particular was when the Miles Morales Thor comic came out.
Oh no.
Like I'm like the whitest person I know. It's like, and I could write a better black superhero than this. So I got one coming out. No, this has happened more than once.
So did you come up with a better slogan for your superhero than "It's Hammer Time"? That was an actual line in that comic, wasn't it?
Yep.
Appalling.
Yeah, haven't really gotten to the catchphrase parts. He's more of a strong silent type. So
Okay.
but yeah, so no, it's the Kickstarter coming out is my comic for Discord #1. It's Atlanta's greatest superhero. I live in Atlanta and I'm tired of New York having all the good superheroes. So I was like, I need a superhero that's gonna try to chase down the bad guys and get confused as to which Peachtree Street he's supposed to go run down. So I thought that would just be a hoot.
Nice.
Yep. So, but yeah, if anybody's interested, so it's kind of like Daredevil meets Spider-Man meets Static Shock meets the Big Peach, and also there's some time travel and some musical magic and some interesting wordplay.
Cool.
Yeah, I like how I think one of the cool things that indie authors can do is kind of bring unique elements to stories, and I like the idea of having more superheroes that exist in different places than New York,
Yeah.
like you said.
Yep.
Because it's like New York and then Metropolis, which wherever that is. Right?
Well, even in the DC universe, I know they have Metropolis and Gotham, and it's like, what would be the southern version of that? I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I will say I'm not a native. I moved down here and I got married, so I'm staying down here. But it's still really interesting seeing how, like, the Atlanta tries to compete with New York. We can't, and we know it.
Well, we were just thinking that we would like to talk about Harry Potter. We've been thinking about doing it for a while. And we know that a lot of people kind of in our circles kind of hate on Harry Potter, and we thought it would be fun.
Yeah, in the spirit of continuing to court controversy and outrage.
You gotta take it head on sometimes.
Yeah.
I even told my one friend, I said, look, I made a promise a long time ago that when I talked about God, I would talk about God the same way I talk about God, that I would talk about God the same way that I would talk about blowjobs and taxes and everything else. And it's just one of those things where it's like, if people don't know that you're going to seriously talk about one thing, changing the pitch of your voice so it suddenly sounds more, amenable, it's not going to win them over.
Yeah, well, I think with I think part of what we're trying to do here, right, is trying to talk about what we like, for starters, and not feel like, oh, we're obligated to like or not like things because of our circle, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, we've only really been part of this indie fiction scene since about 2019 or so, because that's when I put out my first book, and then it was like a few months after that a few months after I put it out that I actually like found this whole scene. So I mean, like, our whole lives we've had preferences and enjoyed things and stuff outside of this, so we're interested in talking about that, and I mean, we're interested in just talking about what's good and bad about things.
Oh, I like talking about what's bad.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to talk about what's bad. So I think we'd like to do some talking about what's bad about Harry Potter too, because there's definitely some bad things. But it's it's something that we've enjoyed a lot, and I think has inspired Harry Potter's definitely inspired my writing, and it's been kind of a good fit for my aesthetics, and I think there's a lot to say about it. So.
And I think a lot of people misremember what the actual books say because of the movies, because of the whole rhetoric in the culture around it. It gets confused.
Well, and I think there's sort of another tendency in some of these circles on Twitter, especially the folks who are like really anti-corporate, anti-brand zero or whatever, to say, okay, well, because there's this giant fandom of all these like adult children or whatever who are obsessed with Harry Potter and have to relate every modern day political thing to some
Mhm.
Harry Potter character, whatever, like it's just not worth, it must be bad or it must
Yeah.
not be worth talking about too. So
Yeah.
there's that aspect of it.
And of course, we'll try to bring it back to indies.
Yeah.
Well, you got off to a good start by talking about LJ Lamplighter. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked Rachel Griffin. And I will always think of that series as Rachel Griffin series and not Unexpected Enlightenment because I always have to look it up.
Have you read more than the first one of those? Because there's like 4 or 5 of them, right?
There's 5 right now, and she just teased the cover of the 6th one.
Okay.
I haven't read any more of those simply because my stack is huge, and I'm always like, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and early on I felt a really big push to do as many authors as I could, to sort of get people exposed to different people, and then in the assumption and the hopes that if they found someone that they liked, they would look at their other stuff or keep reading that series. So I haven't pushed myself to keep reading in series so much, unless I happen to have them in my Kindle library already, or like with Divine Space Pirates, I wanted to read the whole thing.
Yeah, I remember you went out and bought the other 2 right away after you finished reading that first one. That's not something that you usually do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you. Well, I have to say, a lot of people hate me for the cliffhanger, so sorry.
Well, you gotta do it to books, right? Nobody's gonna begrudge you that right here.
I will say, well, like I've been writing for 10 years, and this year I'm trying to push my coffee stuff a little bit more. So if you are interested in my work, go buy stuff from there. But I have a policy with most of my ebooks that if I've made enough money off of them, they're just free now. So
nice.
I did actually just set the Divine Space Pirates to free too. So if you want to spend the money anyway and support me, get the audiobook, which is great, and get the paperbacks and the hardbacks because they're beautiful.
Oh, that's great.
That's a nice way to do it. Because I bet it's pretty hard to keep some of those older books selling anyway. So
sure.
Well, I mean, like I understand your plight with checking out as many different authors as you possibly can, but I also feel really bad when you pick me because I genre hop all the time. I just love doing it. I love trying to find something new and to breathe like a lot of what I call like my take into the genre. So
yeah,
it's hard to just find books that I like, and it's hard to find movies that I like. So I usually just write my own, and usually I'm happy if people are excited to like them too.
Well, that's another great thing, sort of similar to what David was saying earlier about indies, is you can do that kind of stuff. You aren't locked in to pleasing a publisher to make to meet some sort of marketability goal.
Yeah. Or a genre convention or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of understand it because being an indie, like you do see a lot more behind the scenes stuff that goes on, and marketing is much better where it's like, hey, I just wrote this fantasy series. Here's one book that's free. Buy the next 4 books that are free. Oh, and by the way, here's this other fantasy series that I wrote. Here's another free book. And you kind of go on that path down the line and so on and so forth and stuff. And then you get people excited for the next stuff, and it's all well, if it's something that they can expect that they'll like it, and generally, give you a show of good faith by tossing the cash your way.
Yeah.
With my stuff, it's more like, hey, I've got this like new comic coming out, and didn't you just love my last children's book? Can you give me money for these wildly different things? So, and it's so funny because I'm like, I'm actually very extroverted. You guys caught me on I don't really want to write tonight. So I'll babble on for like 6 hours trying to get out of it before I'm like, oh, everybody fell asleep. I guess it's time to go.
Can you talk
But-
a little bit about your children's book?
Oh yeah, sure. It's actually up on the coffee page too. So a few years ago, and like I said, I feel really bad. The bad side about being me is that like I have the bad is that I like working on 6 books at once, but you literally cannot work on 6 books at once. So I have the my children's book that I have is called The Legend of the Rainbow Unicorn. And it's set in this world that's kind of in my Realms Beyond the Rainbow story series.
Okay.
And in that series, so in that's this is the kind of like it sets it up, and I actually have a note in the book that's like, this is not heretical. It's not meant to be heretical or anything, but it talks about how the horse became a unicorn. And it started out with, God creating man and woman, and man had like named all the animals. And so when he brought, woman to meet everybody, the horse came forth and offered to carry her. And so man asked God to like give the horse a gift. And so the book kind of goes through that, and the gift ends up being misused and sad things, and ends up in Abel's household. And that's where, like I said, the heretical part kind of comes in.
Oh, yeah.
So, but it's really cute. I got it illustrated. There's an audiobook link that I can give to you if you want to review it.
love
And it's a special for my coffee supporters. So
Okay.
and they can actually buy the audiobook too there and stuff. It's nice. I really like for what it's worth, I really like the coffee platform. It's kind of like a more marketable Patreon sort of thing, where you don't have to be a subscriber to see everything. But you
Yeah.
can also buy things, and you can see what like a lot of the stuff's going to. I keep telling people what I'm working on or not working on, or I'm supposed to be working on.
Yeah, I was
And-
looking into that. Maybe we might do something
Mhm.
with it this next year here.
It's not a bad idea. I mean, worst comes to worst is, nobody gives you anything. By the looks of it, you got a couple of people in the chat that are, willing to step up and be your first supporters, maybe.
Yeah, we love our people in the chat.
That's lovely.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about your children's book though, because like I was talking with George Alexopoulos, and he's doing a children's book that is, I think it's this Friday that's releasing.
Yeah, he's actually putting it out already, which it seemed like when he was talking to you, he was kind of like, I don't know when it'll ever be done.
Yeah, he was talking about how behind he was.
Mhm.
But I've seen a lot of people, sort of mostly people who have just been exposed to like the Iron Age movement of indies, being like, where are the children's books? Because they're seeing a lot of stuff from like the comics side of things and sort of coming across into fiction. And so I'm excited to talk about and share children's books too. I haven't done too much of that on my website, just like YA stuff that would appeal to adults too. I'm not sure if I would want to put reviews of kids' books on Periapsis Press, but it's certainly something that there's a market for right now, that people are interested in being able to find.
Yeah, and even if you don't put it on the website, I mean, just being able
talking
to
about it, yeah.
review it and tweet it out, I think is a good thing.
Mhm.
So
I mean, you guys have such a nice website too, by the way.
Thank
and
you.
You could probably put in a children's page without much issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing about children's books is they do tend to be short. So
Fast reads.
Mhm.
yeah, it's like the haiku version of poetry.
Yes.
Mhm.
I will say, like, personally, like, I know there's a big push for middle grade stuff right now. My
Okay.
sister-in-law is a librarian. She's like, "Do you know any good middle grades?" And I'm like, "I'm working on it. Okay, I'm working on it." So my kids are getting older, and I like having I like writing books for them a lot. And my comic is more for my son, and my children's book here, like the illustrations and stuff in it, that, they're very nice, and it's nice to see my daughter excited to read it. So
Yeah.
we actually just got the proof copy this evening in the mail. Didn't turn out right, so but but it's a quick enough fix. I just gotta get it fixed. That's the other downside of being an indie, is that you have to do all your work. So,
Yes. Yes.
can't call the publisher and be like, "Hey, you have somebody that you give benefits to and pay a bi-monthly paycheck to that can do this for me. Thanks."
At least you have a proof copy though, so you can fix it, instead of just finding out that it went out to everybody with some sort of error.
Mhm.
Yep. Oh well. I sorry for hijacking your stream.
Oh
I'm
no,
very,
not at
uh,
all. It's
it's
fun.
okay. I'm getting very practiced at chilling my stuff. So, but I will say, with regards to the Starlight Chronicles, part of the reason I wanted to write them initially, and like, there's 7 books in the main series, is to kind of mimic Harry Potter's growth with that.
Okay.
So I will say that's one thing I really liked about the series, is that you kind of grew up with the characters if you were a certain age. And I think we're close to the same age. So
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about how we came to read Harry
Yeah,
Potter,
that's a good
because
idea.
one of my big regrets in life is that I did not read them as I was growing up. So, we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Why don't you
Sure.
go first?
Let's see. I think I was in 5th grade when I started reading them, so I was a little bit late. Everybody around me was,
But probably only 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
late, right?
I heard about them in 3rd grade for what it's worth, and it was about, I think it was
Okay.
1998 at the time. So
Yeah. I'm trying to count.
Yeah.
Well, I know, like, the books first got published in America in 1994, because I looked it up.
Okay.
Whoa, geez, that early?
Yes. So a lot of people actually
Yeah.
think that I think the films had their 10th anniversary or whatever.
21st.
21st, yes. So,
Yeah.
well, by the first film, this is the last film. I
Right,
think.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
Something like that.
The first
This is-
film.
The first film, I think, came out in 2001. I think it was like the same,
Yeah.
around the same time as Fellowship of the Ring.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think I remember it was like the when I remember becoming aware of Harry Potter was like seeing it in the Scholastic catalogs, and at that time there was like the first 3 books were out, so I remember seeing like the first 3, and then the release of Goblet of Fire was like a really big deal, because that was like the first time that everybody was, waiting for the midnight launch and lined up to get the books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
but-
sure there was some of that for the earlier ones a little bit too, but I mean,
No, she really only gained steam after the 3rd one, because there was such a big gap in the release dates for it.
oh, okay.
That makes sense.
Like, I think the Prisoner of Azkaban came out in like 96 or 97,
Sure.
I think. And then the Goblet of Fire didn't come out until, I think, 2001.
Yeah. So
So-
I'm looking at the dates, and of course they're arranged in alphabetical order or some such, and I can't. Okay, the 97 is the Sorcerer's Stone, 98
Oh.
Chamber of Secrets, 99 Prisoner of
That
Azkaban.
I wonder if that's the U.S. release date though.
Could be. And then 2000 Goblet of Fire, and then there's a gap,
Yeah.
3 years to Order of the Phoenix. 2 years to Half Blood Prince, 2 years to Deathly
Yeah.
Hallows.
Yeah.
I was born in '89, so I was pretty young when Goblet of Fire came out, but I remember
Yeah.
it being a really big deal. And it was kind of funny because that was like it was a really big book,
Mhm.
and it's like all these little kids reading this big giant book.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
I
it's kind of
remember one of my classmates in 5th grade bragging about her little brother who was in 3rd grade who was reading Harry Potter, and it was just this giant book.
Well, that's part of the reason that they became popular. So, like when I started teaching high school, that's one of the things that I really like to read, like recommend to my high schoolers because it was something that they would just be willing to read. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think,
And oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think that was a lot of people's experience. It was like the first book that they were exposed to that they just ate up.
Mhm.
Well, I credit a lot of this to the hype too, because like during the '90s, like Patrick had mentioned in the chat about like nostalgia goggles and stuff. In the '90s, we were getting so much stuff. We were getting Pokemon, we were getting anime, we were getting and we were getting Harry Potter, and we were also getting the Star Wars prequels and the re-releases and stuff for Star Wars. I'm a big Star. I like Star Wars is probably my first real love of literature, and it's such a shame they only made 3 movies. So
I'm always gonna enjoy the prequels to a certain degree. I don't really think they're very good movies, but
I call them the appendices.
yeah, well, so for me, and not to go too deep into Star Wars, but Phantom Menace was the first movie I ever saw in a theater, and I was 10 years old when it came out, so it just blew my mind. And I think like looking back on it, Phantom Menace still kind of felt like original trilogy Star Wars in a lot of ways. Like it had more of the actual sets instead of everything just being green screened, and I don't know, it just felt like, oh my gosh, more Star Wars, right? So I'm always gonna like that one.
No, it's okay. I'm a devout Christian, and I enjoyed watching the Mr. Plinkett reviews of Star Wars.
Oh yeah, no, and those definitely I enjoy those too. But yeah, for sure I think what you're saying about just how that time was like kind of a crazy time as far as all these big things like Star Wars, and you mentioned Pokemon, and Harry Potter, like all these things coming out that just ended up being these huge things even years later. It was
kind of like the launch of the internet too, because I mean that's how we got a lot of those things. And so like those are the OG big ones when we go to when we think about the internet. It's like, oh yes, I remember LiveJournal.
Yeah, well, and I think it was kind of a time where like you mentioned anime too, like we weren't the original anime fans. Like there was a lot of like people who enjoyed anime, but it was a time when that stuff started becoming mainstream and becoming more easily accessible. And I think the internet kind of helped with that too, right? You weren't just like, we were kids, right? We couldn't like drive to special stores that would sell anime on VHS, but we did have the internet and we could look things up. And we'd learn about things from our friends, and we'd find things on the internet, and it was kind of like, I don't know, it was a time when all that stuff got way more accessible really fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, people talk about like the birth of empires in a similar fashion to what I think about when the internet, like when people talk about the age of empire for America, I mean, like it's the same thing with the internet. You start off as this like really wholesome kind of if like almost like being born. It's like this wholesome but bloody really experience, and then like you start out as a child full of wonder and joy, and you're just exploring so many things, and then you become a teenager and you go through your emu phase, and and then you start you know, you hit puberty and it's like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? And let's do this, but dark. And it's like now we're in the adult phase where we're just disaffected all day long.
Yes.
But just like that though, like with the Age of Empires, at some point, like you either you stop growing or you break into a lot of like different kind of tangents, and I think that's kind of like what the internet is today. We're in the balkanization phase, so
Hmm.
where like I have a lot of anime friends, but it's like, hey, I haven't watched that or heard of it or don't think I would like it.
Mhm.
But like everybody who loves Toonami is like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, yes. And I love that.
Yeah, there aren't as many universal things anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think for me, I kind of think that's okay as long as there are ways that people can find out about things to like, right?
Mhm.
I think my hope with, you know, indie fiction and promoting indie fiction isn't necessarily that we make something as big as Harry Potter, but just
Right.
that the things that are out there get more accessible and, you know,
And
maybe
can be found.
maybe
yeah.
everything gets 10 times bigger, right? Like all these indie authors that we're promoting right now get 10 times bigger than they are now, right? Nobody gets 1,000,000 times bigger, but everybody gets 10 times bigger.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and you guys play a vital part of that. I mean, I you know, I can write stuff all day long, but it doesn't help if nobody reads it.
Yep.
So
Yep. So you started reading Harry
Yeah.
Potter in 5th.
So looking at the dates, I think probably when the third book came out was
Mhm.
when all of my friends really got caught up in it. And my
Like they'd all read it
Mhm.
before and were caught up before Goblet of Fire came out. So that was the
Yeah.
big wave.
and we hadn't moved yet. So it would have been before the twins were born. So I must have been 8. 8 or not. Well, yeah, I think I was 8.
Yep.
Because I remember because my mom was my family's Christian. So my mom was not sold on the whole, oh, they're demonic, but she was a careful parent. So she said that she would read them out loud to me. And so I remember having this really special experience where I was sitting upstairs on my mom's bed and she was reading to me.
Mhm.
That's beautiful.
So that I didn't read them as fast as all of my friends did because I was reading them with my mom.
That's better like that though. I just finished reading well, I've read a number of like standalones with my kids, but we read all the Judy Blume Super Fudge books.
Oh, nice.
My kids love those. So, and I've read a few comics with them, and I've read a few other things. But my husband is reading Narnia with them right now,
Oh,
so they're
nice.
up to the silver chair, and I think that's just a beautiful thing. You know, there'll be all these great memories of mommy and daddy sitting with them and reading books.
Yeah.
Nice. So I didn't read them as a kid. I was aware of them, and my family was kind of careful about stuff too. But also grew up in a Christian home, and we were careful about stuff. But I don't think my parents were like, "Oh, you're not allowed to read them." We
Yeah.
just kind of didn't. I had a lot of friends, other Christian friends, who liked them along with other stuff that I liked, like Pokemon and Star Wars and everything.
Mhm.
So, but I didn't actually get to see. I just never saw any of the movies or anything. And then one of my friends got into them because he was like really big into film soundtracks. So he started listening to the soundtracks, and then he's like, "Okay, I gotta watch these movies." And that was like when I was in high school. And then around that same time, I was like just hearing this. I was listening to this random like Christian radio station, and this woman was like talking about how the Harry Potter books were actually Christian allegory. And I was like, what? I haven't heard this take before. Now I've got to read them. So it was like my senior year of high school, and it was like I think right after the last book came out, I started reading through them, and I watched the movies like after I read each one. So I think, yeah, I had read them. I'd read them all except for the last book, basically before I started watching the movies, and and when I read the last book right after that. So I kind of experienced them all in a very short time frame when I started reading them, and that was really a lot of fun. So I during high school I didn't read a ton, so it was kind of here and there. I would read what I found interesting. I was really busy usually with schoolwork, so I didn't have a lot of time to read for fun. I played a lot of video games and stuff in my free time, so I didn't usually read a lot for fun except during the summer. And it was fun to get into Harry Potter because they were really engaging, and it was like, I was old enough that I could kind of make my own decisions, so I could stay up late at night, and I stayed up really late at night reading a few of them, and that's something that I will look fondly back on. I was really impressed with how compelling they were too. The first book was kind of, I thought it was nice, and there was a lot of good qualities too, but it wasn't anything great. But I was just blown away by the second Harry Potter book, and then they basically just kept getting better, except for Goblet of Fire. so that was kind of my experience with them. And then I've enjoyed the movies too, and I think they're really good in their own way too, and probably some of the best movie adaptations of books that there are. So that's something that's really cool about Harry Potter too, is how good the movies are.
Mm-hmm. It really surprised me when the Percy Jackson movie came out, and they just completely changed characters, changed plot, changed all kinds of elements when it seemed like they were going to try to do a similar thing as Harry Potter, where they sort of captured that entire franchise in film, and just completely dropped the ball. I remember thinking that. Mm-hmm. Coming out of that theater going, what the heck was that?
Yeah, we were really spoiled in those years on some good adaptations. That some of the bad ones kind of stick out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, my work has been compared to Percy Jackson's, but it's not like I don't understand it. I don't know. I will say, like, when I started writing the Starlight Chronicles, I was getting my teaching degree. I wanted to write something that boys would like, because there was a lot of push saying that boys just don't read. And so I did my best with that. And my husband really likes Percy Jackson stuff. So, but it was so funny. I think at that point, it's like, I need a boy book that I wrote that I can enjoy. So because I feel bad for saying it, but I just couldn't get through Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson is like Greek gods too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Greek mythology.
I don't know. I never really found Greek mythology very interesting. Like, just as a thing for basing another story or something on. I just don't find it very compelling. Like, pirates are cool, wizards are cool, vampires are cool. Greek myth is just kind of meh to me.
I really enjoyed it. Maybe more because my younger sisters were old enough to enjoy that when it came out. But I don't know. Like, I haven't read those as frequently as Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or any of the other sort of series that sort of captured my imagination, so I would have to look at them again before I could say why.
I will say, like, one thing I really liked about Harry Potter was that it was kind of like a world that was built into our own world. and like part of the charm still exists today. Like a good contrast to like that would be like Wizards of Waverly Place, if you remember that from Disney Channel.
We
With
didn't have TV growing up. We had 3 channels and they were all news. So I
Oh,
missed out
okay.
a lot of the TV shows.
Oh, okay. Well, the charm of Harry Potter, I think, exists because, like I said, it was beginning of the '90s. It was that internet age, but it was like the age of information before all the tech takeover came along with it.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's not a lot of technology in Harry Potter,
Mhm.
and I mean, some people will say that's one of its weaknesses, but I honestly think it's part of its charm. Is that
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
just like you don't have a lot that distracts you, and you know, Hermione having a Kindle instead of all her books just wouldn't be as charming, you know.
Yeah.
um, but they tried doing more of that with Wizards of Waverly Places. It was almost like a deconstructive take on Harry Potter, and I was sitting there and I'm
Okay.
like, okay, no, thank you.
How did you become like exposed to Harry Potter? Or like when did you start reading?
So I've just always really liked to read. My whole family does. My mom would let me read whatever I wanted, which was both good and bad at times. Not gonna lie. I've read a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have. But like I do try. Like I mean, part of the reason I became a teacher is because I could articulate better why I liked stuff and why I didn't like stuff and why stuff wasn't good or like um why it wasn't like great, but I didn't like it anyway or something. You know, just being able to do that would make me feel better about it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so but there was this like I remember it was in 3rd grade that I started reading Harry Potter because I had a crush on a boy and he was reading them. So, yep. So if there's a reason that came along in my life. No, it's nice though. I mean, he ended up becoming my first boyfriend. And we would talk about Harry Potter and Star Wars. So,
Nice.
yeah. It's actually so funny though, but like people ask me like all the time, like, why you believe in God and stuff. And I'm like, all his small little miracles amuse me so much. It turns out that my first boyfriend and my husband have the same birthday. And it was just you know, and if you broke down like some of the generic features like hair color, eye color and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, they look similar.
So what you're saying is God gave you like a practice run.
Yep. I got a prequel. So but yeah, I love that kind of like little detail, and it's just so funny. Like it's just so funny to me. It's like real life is just you know, I mean odds are nothing in eternity, right? But I mean like you have to have somebody giving you those odds. So but it's funny though because like obviously I've liked Harry Potter. Harry Potter has stayed with me a lot more.
It's interesting to me that all 3 of us came from Christian homes, but there wasn't that that anti fantasy, anti magic in books sentiment that I'm seeing a lot of on Twitter more recently. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think honestly, like I tell people if they ask me, you know, like I'm an intellectual evangelical, which is almost like an oxymoron, and yep, you're laughing because you know. But you know, evangelicals as a whole tend to be very reactionary. And if you think about the internet coming up, and it's like, oh my gosh, my computer screen is you know, filled with demons and you know, sorcery and imagery that's just not healthy, and there's overexposure, and what if it leads to the dark side, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I can understand I can understand the reactionary freak out, like I said, and I think it's helpful to kind of put it in that '90s perspective with that. So, um, um, but my mom, like I said, my mom was like, "Look, you're smart. You like to read. You will read a lot of things that you will not agree with, and you can read them and not agree with things." And that's how I got through the God delusion.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of amused at it now because like it's just a very very bad argument where he criticizes people. But I could say that for another show.
I remember part of the reason that my mom wanted to read together was she wanted to talk about stuff with me. And I don't remember talking at all about magic, but I definitely remember every book talking about how Harry was doing stuff that was like in direct disobedience like to the rules, to the adults, and how that's not how we behave. My mom was way more concerned with his troublemaker spirit than with his
Well, that's probably one of the criticisms of Harry Potter that does come up at some point. It is slightly more relativistic than hardcore conservative Christians would like.
Well, I think it's a fair criticism on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's kind of it's a little bit silly. So,
well, it is silly too.
It's something else that we see a lot. Some of these circles on Twitter is like a common criticism they have is like, oh, why can't we have like more nice families and stories? And it's like, well, the reason that you can't have more nice families and stories is that if in a functioning family, a little kid wouldn't get dragged by himself into an adventure. His parents would shield himself from that. So if you want a child protagonist, you can't have a nice functioning family and an exciting story at the same time. And I think that's kind of the thing with Harry Potter's. It's like, well, you can say, oh, Harry should, defer more to authority, but then you've just kind of precluded a nice kid protagonist story.
Yeah, I don't think.
Would you agree with that? Or
oh, I was gonna say I don't think a lot of people think about those things.
yeah, it's just like how do you write a story with a sort of self-directed child protagonist who's like being active and driving the plot forward when they have parent. I'm sure you could do it. I think it would be tricky.
Yeah.
Oh well,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I will try. I will say it like in most of my families, I do try to make the parents live if I can. But I will. But sometimes it's helpful if one of them's pretending to be dead, or they're actually dead. It depends on the story there. And then like how much of that has shaped the character too. Like one of my fears as a person is that I'm just a bad mom. So I like having all these terrible mothers that I write. And it's like, see, at least I'm not this person. So
yeah, the idea of the mother in Hansel and Gretel being the actual mother and not a stepmother as a child is a little horrific, and as a mother it's like, well, at least I'm not her.
Oh well, I will say like there's actually a fun line in the Starlight Chronicles where Hamilton, who's my main character, he figures out that basically his teachers and his parents were right about like when you get older you'll see things their way more. And he's like, well, I didn't want to say that they were right. Well, they were right, but I still wasn't going to admit that I was wrong. And I'm like, I feel like that is like so true for me. It's like my parents had said like growing up, like this is like this and this is like this. And I'm like, I'll show you. And it's like, no, I did not. I give up.
Just recently, I had, and I couldn't even tell you what it was, but it was a thought where I was like thinking about my family, my kids, and I thought, this is the way it is. And I was like, I've definitely heard my mother say that. It's just I had to come to it on my own from the perspective of a mom. And it was just so like a mundane sort of statement of the like something about life, Just don't
Yes.
really believe your parents until you've lived like their sort of same experience.
Oh, well, and it's, I mean, like this, like David was talking earlier about just like how relativistic things were and how that is like a fair criticism, but it's also silly. And that's because paradoxes aren't the same thing as contradictions. Like you should submit to authority, but your authority has to be good authority. And, if it's not something that you can readily fix all the time, like with like the Philosopher's Stone and stuff, that, it's like, hey, we got to protect the stone. And it's like,
Well,
they don't know that things are going on and stuff, and we gotta hurry.
In Harry Potter, there's a lot of there is sort of a chronic problem with like Magic Academy sort of magic school stories is that the adults are stupid, or not, or like not proactively doing all of the things that they should. But there's also a lot of like, who do we trust with this information? Do we tell people that we think X, and then if we do they believe us? And like you see that a lot with Harry will accuse someone, Malfoy or Snape, and sometimes he's right, but people don't believe him, and sometimes he's wrong, and it's good that they didn't believe him.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really liked about the series too, is that like, you do get kind of more of a fuller picture of everybody by the end of it. Because like you just don't realize, like I think it would have been very different if like one of the really nice kind of like bait and switch tricks that Rowling does with the series is that she keeps the focus on Harry and his dad for the majority of the series, and then she kind of only really switches this in the last book to how his mother grew up. And I mean, there's little hints of it along the way, but like there's nothing to suggest that Lily would even like get along with Snape. And in fact, there's like the opposite.
Yeah.
In the brain fluffy cloud bowl. So
yeah.
I think that's just nice too, because like I was even thinking about this week, is like because like my kids have their grandparents. Like my grandparents kind of all died when I was younger, so I didn't really know them. But my kids will know my parents better than I knew their parents.
Yeah.
And that's just a really nice thing to happen. But it's also like if your parents die.
Oh, seems like we lost you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes. You're back. No, you cut out after if your parents die.
And maybe you're gone again. Let me see if I don't think we're frozen.
That was something that I always kind of wondered about. And I don't even remember what the context was. But Harry didn't have any grandparents or like any other family. And
Well, the Dursleys.
Right.
Yeah.
No grandparents, which I thought
Mhm.
was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's just the scope of the story, right?
Right.
You can't. I'd say maybe one flaw in the world building of Harry Potter is that it's kind of limited in scope.
Yeah.
And maybe the lack of grandparents is part of that. Like, it just doesn't go back that far
Yeah.
in time, or that is sort of being progressively fleshed out in a way that is not super consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What point were you gonna make?
Oh, so like I was saying that like if your parents died like Harry's did, you wouldn't like really know them. You would just know them, like you'd have a little bit of piece, like everybody who knew them, it'd almost be like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, trying to figure out who this around this void of who they were. And like even C.S. Lewis there's a very famous quote where he says like when you lose someone, you lose the part of you that person brought out in you.
Sure.
And I don't know. I think about this all the time. Maybe it's the writer, maybe it's the romantic. I don't remember. I don't know. But I think about this all the time. It's like I only have a certain amount of time to be here with my husband and my children. And it's very, very depressing.
I think it's good to think about, though.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the paradox of life, is that you have to be kind of aware of death if you want to make life full.
I
writing is my way out of that, I guess.
I think a lot about like leaving artifacts behind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a house full of junk that people have to go through after I die, but there are things that are important to me that I want to build. Where, like, I do scrapbooking, so I feel like I'm sort of making an artifact about our family, about me as the scrapbooker.
Mm-hmm.
When my grandma died, my mom, my dad's mom, they brought home a bunch of her stuff that nobody wanted. And one of the things that my mom brought back was a cross stitch that she had done and given to them when they moved into their house. And it was a cross stitch of a house with their address on it. Well, they were selling the house, and so it didn't really belong anywhere. And I was like, well, give that to me, because I feel like that is an artifact, right? Like my mom made it for them and their house. And I don't know, like, I think it's kind of romantic to think about pieces of me being like safe kept by David and my kids and my parents. But I also think it's kind of maybe wishful thinking to think that I can leave these meaningful artifacts behind too. I don't know where I'm really going with this thought, but
it's something we're thinking about for sure.
Yeah,
I think about it too, because that's like a big motivation for me and my writing and my kind of artistic projects, because I'm not really an artist in my day job, right? So my everyday life doesn't need that, like sort of fulfilling my responsibilities and like what my family and what society expects of me. It just has nothing really to do with my art. But part of the reason I do it is I want to have something that I can leave behind that people can look at. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to care about it, and I don't really think that I'm doing it because I expect people to care, but it still is something that I want to leave behind. Like, I wish I had I wish I had stuff like that from my grandparents. Like your grandma was a bit more creative, so you have like poems and stuff that she
Yeah.
wrote. My relatives weren't really, they didn't really do things like that so much. So I don't have like these kind of creative artifacts from them.
Yeah. I think the closest thing might have been your grandpa's house because he built that, right?
Yeah, and then I mean it's not in the family anymore.
Right.
And some of my grandparents like made things, like sewed things,
Oh, sure.
clothes and quilts and different things like that, but it's kind of few and far between.
Well, not everything is like physical either that your parents
Yeah.
did with you.
Right.
Like one of my favorite things about growing up was I went to a very traditional church growing up, and traditional churches are kind of like far and few in between, today because everybody doesn't like the music. But I love the music, I love hymns, and I love hearing them. And I think that's because my mom, so my mom's dad died when she was really really young, so I never even met him. He wasn't alive, but her mom died when I was close to 3. And her mom loved to go to church, and they would go to the old Presbyterian church and they would sing the hymns and stuff. So when my mom raised me, I think out of like missing her mom, she found it was a really nice place that would play the traditional hymns and stuff.
Nice.
And so when I hear hymns, that's what I think of. I think of my family. I think of not just like, like, first of all, hymns are just better written anyway. Better theology. I get more theology in a rendition of "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," than I don't know, some Tumblr
Yeah.
youth group pastor, Tumblr happy youth group pastor. But I mean, like, but I think of how that has kind of stayed with me and how it'll outlast me, and
Yeah.
how it's outlasted other people in my family too. So
That's
I'm trying to get my kids to play the piano more so I can get them to play the hymns.
that's a great point. That's something that I've thought about too, because we before COVID, we went to a church that was in a building that was very old, and then during COVID, that church went kind of
So church heaven.
Went to church heaven. No, it didn't die.
It didn't die.
They sort of went woke, and
Yeah.
they also
They went to church hell.
Yeah, no. They went woke, and they also kind of just stopped functioning due to COVID.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, we ended up changing churches.
And one of the things that when we were looking around, and we didn't look for very long, but one of the things that I thought was important was I wanted it to be not a utilitarian building, and to do hymns, because I felt like that was really cool to be in a place and singing songs that were and doing the same things that Christians had done for generations.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool, like we
legacy.
said, kind of, yeah.
You don't, I mean, like, it's it's something that it's greater than you, and it will outlast you, and it's something you can give without fear of it being gone one day.
Yeah. And I think that that sense of being part of something bigger actually is part of why Harry Potter became so big, in sort of a
quasi-religious manner, maybe,
right? a lesser
liturgy.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't have that same fulfillment.
Well, of course not,
because there really is. Well, you see it being torn apart just by the author
Yes.
saying something that her fandom wasn't ready for.
Did you know that you were gay reading this?
I
Oh, jeez.
I just think that it's kind of interesting that so much of our generation has found or thought they found a community either in Harry Potter or Pokemon or Star Wars, you know.
Mhm.
And we're sort of seeing how fragile those were in
Well,
more recent years, you know.
people have forgotten with the rise of technology that humanity is very fragile and civilization is complicated in many levels because it's easily broken. And I think that's one of the things I talk about in my other book is the difference between the fall of civilization versus the fall of humanity. You know, I mean, we live in some of that in real time now, but it's just, you know, it's like you said with the church. It's like people have been doing this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So we always end up back at square one eventually. And there's some great comfort in that.
Yeah.
That we can survive this and we can outlast this and we can prepare for this, even as uncomfortable and unhappy as it will make us.
Yeah.
I do agree that with the community aspect too. I think a lot of people were just, I mean, like people have always gathered on like interests, and it was just one of the first kind of like huge fandoms because it kind of grew up along with the internet. I think. I really do think that had a big kind of massive effect over a lot of the fandom, and the fact that Rowling is very good at the what I would call probably like the humanist elements of things, like all the different houses have like different characteristics and stuff. That's very universal.
Yeah.
With like the Myers-Briggs and the Kersey temperament sorter and the
Yeah.
Engram now, you know, like.
Yep.
Do you know your Engram number? I forgot mine.
No, we've never done that. But it's neat that you brought that up because I think that's one of the really appealing parts of Harry Potter too. I think people like people really
they like
that.
understanding themselves.
Yep. And there's a lot of things like this where it's almost too kind of like a religion where there's kind of an interesting philosophy at the core of it that's fun to think about, you know, like with Star Wars, are you a Jedi or are you a Sith, you know? And then if you enjoy that, you kind of start looking at the world and thinking about the world through that framework. Then you have the Harry Potter houses. Another one is like the colors in Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you've ever played Magic, but we were really into it for a couple of years. And when you're really into Magic the Gathering, you start seeing the colors and everything because it's like a really coherent way of thinking about things.
Or it used to be.
Yeah. I think maybe they've lost that a little bit.
It went woke too, so
yeah. Well, and they did some weird things with some colors too. But yeah, I mean, just having an interesting sort of philosophical idea like that at the core of a story, I think, makes for a broad appeal and lets people kind of put themselves into it in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cross fandom kind of like applications to that too. Like I always enjoyed the Tumblr post about Willy Wonka being part of Slytherin.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins being part of Slytherin.
Yeah. I think in my opinion, one of the sort of bad parts of Harry Potter is that there weren't more good Slytherin characters. Like I think in the last book, for sure in the last movie, but it's like the Battle of Hogwarts is raging and it's like, okay, just lock all the Slytherins up in the dungeon. It's like, why aren't there good Slytherin characters other than these like handful of like really major, really like conflicted, kind of anti-hero type character? There should just be some like everyday good Slytherin characters.
Well, because Slytherins value a lot of the things that, as
Death Eaters did.
well, yeah, but there was also like the reason that the like Voldemort had appeal was the emphasis on like the wizarding culture
Mhm.
and the families and sort of the idea of
Mhm.
a heritage, right? Which
Mm.
has a lot of appeal. But like that was sort of shunted to the side in favor of like making him as like as bad as possible. And you start to wonder how could anybody follow him?
Mhm. Well, and then just the I mean, like setting aside the whole like racist thing,
Mm.
just I mean, the sort of fundamental Slytherin thing, in my opinion, is like ambition,
Right.
which is really not good or bad in and of itself. And like
Right.
to sort of use a real life example, a few years ago at work, we did this personality test thing, and it was like some variation of the 4 classic like personality types, but it basically ended up there's a 1-to-1 correspondence between these types in the Hogwarts houses. and I'm a Ravenclaw, and my best friend at work, well, and like most of the people in our group were Ravenclaws, and I think that would have been pretty obvious. My best friend at work was a Slytherin, and he and I worked great together because he had like a very go get it attitude, like let's just get this done. I want to get this working. I want to be in charge of projects. I want to get things done. And I was kind of more of a I want to understand how this works. I like doing things right for their own sake. I like procedure, you know. So he and I just worked really great together. And it would just be foolish to say, okay, that kind of attitude, like the Slytherin attitude, is just only bad.
Yeah.
Because it's so very clearly not. It really all depends on what that thing that you're going after is.
Yeah.
If you're just going after something that's bad, then yeah, it's bad, but it doesn't have to be. And it you know, the good Slytherin characters, the Slytherin good guys in Harry Potter are all very conflicted and kind of messed up.
Yeah.
And there could have been some just nice non-conflicted Slytherin allies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Regulus Black is kind of an interesting character, but like he's just dead, right? Like that's
Yeah, there aren't too many Slytherin characters I can think of off the top of my head that would fit in that good category. I do like that Malfoy is kind of redeemed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. It's very tepid and stuff.
Yeah. I struggle with Malfoy. Like I'm not sure that I'm happy with his arc, you know? It was emotional. I think Rowling does a really great job with being emotionally impactful and feeling real. But I just, at the end, Malfoy didn't, and maybe it's just because there wasn't enough falling action at the end, but I didn't feel like he became anything on his own. Everything was sort of ripped out from under him by the end. So I feel conflicted about Malfoy's end, but
I'm sure he has a lot of potential. I think that was kind of like the other good thing that I liked about it is that like Rowling's very fan friendly. At least she didn't have a problem with some people like writing fan fiction, which I'm as an author, I'm like, I'm not sure I want people writing fan fiction in my stuff. So I hope if somebody reached out and was like, "Hey, can I write?" I'd be like, "Oh, I guess so. I guess so. Don't make me, don't write something that would make me like sick to read or something,
Right.
please." Though.
Yeah, Tolkien was like, "No, I will sue you." And Rowling was like,
Oh,
"Yeah, go for it." I
yeah.
actually read James Potter.
Oh yes, those were like the books that somebody else wrote about
Yeah,
Harry's son.
and
Yes, I
those
saw
were
those.
that was great. It was like felt like Harry Potter and had a lot of very similar themes too. Just it was a great job doing fan fiction. What fan fiction ought to be, and not self-insert weird fetish type stuff.
Mary Sue's.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm responding to Patrick
go
over
ahead.
here.
I think it's actually interesting that sort of talking about Mary Sue's, like that people think that Harry is kind of like he doesn't do anything proactive, that he just sort of like falls into
Yeah.
success. Because that I didn't think was my experience, my perception of the books.
I don't think he's a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu. I think he's a traumatized child.
Yeah. And I
Um,
mean, the plot does revolve around him,
Right.
but it revolves around him for good in-world reasons, right?
Mhm.
So
mm,
I feel like the criticism can't be you're not telling this story well. It has to be I don't like this kind of story, right?
yeah, well, Mary Sue's are like they're universally loved by everybody who's good,
Mm-hmm.
and they're hated by people who are evil, and um, they just kind of have these very talented gifts and unique features, and to some extent, that's probably true, especially in the first couple books. But as time like goes on, you see like he fights with Ron and he fights with his friends, and not everybody who ends up good does agree with him, and so I don't think it's a very valid criticism either. As far as the plot elements, like I agree with what you said, like the plot bends around him, but it bends around him because it's this ultimate battle prophecy thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very well built into the narrative, and there are a lot of kind of like tangents that he involves himself in
Yeah.
because of those things.
Mhm.
So
And I think
it's oh, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it doesn't break plot at any point drastically, um, where he's at. So that's kind of like the written rules about Mary Sue's. Is like everything kind of just happens to them, and sometimes for no reason.
Yeah.
So
Well, and the a lot of the story of Harry Potter, like a lot of the plot is kind of about discovering some mystery or something about the wizarding world, and Harry sort of relating the things that he's learning in school and the things that he's learning about the world to solving this mystery. So if you're going to write that kind of story, you kind of have to have sort of an outsider type character coming in, and you have people interacting with him in that way. So there's a lot of that, he kind of becomes the center of things because he doesn't understand how things work, and it's like, again, that's just the kind of story that's being told.
Yeah.
If you don't want a story about a character discovering stuff about a world, then you're not going to like Harry Potter. And it's not because Harry's a Mary Sue, it's just because you don't like that kind of story.
Well, and I think one element of Mary Sue that has become more prevalent more recently with Marvel and stuff is the comparison, like their sort of special talents and abilities are not just like overpowered or like special compared to their antagonists, but they're stood next to their allies and made in every situation to be like this superior
Mhm.
character who can't come off badly in any interaction. Oh, has to have that snappy remark to everybody. No one can be
Like one up them.
right in like even in a friendly way, right? But you don't have that with Harry Potter. Like you said, he fights with his friends. He is wrong sometimes, and um, there are plenty of people who are willing to tell him so, rub his face in it a bit.
He's not successful in his romantic pursuits.
Yeah,
He experiences a lot of like angst and failure and things not going his way in that department, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Part of the story.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, one of the things I really like too is that like as he grows up, especially, he starts to realize that the rest of the world with adults aren't always going to be on his side.
Yeah.
Like, I think of Rita Skeeter.
Yeah.
People talk about fake news and I just laugh. So it's like Rita Skeeter's its eyes welling up as he talks about his parents.
Yeah. she's definitely got the clickbait angle going.
Yeah. So yeah.
But like in a way, a lot of his experiences were sort of growing up with us, like that sort of realization that not everybody in the adult world like has your best interests at heart, or like they have their own agenda and stuff like that. I think maybe not everybody who read the books was paying as close attention to that as maybe I was, but
oh well. Not to get too overtly political or anything, but the minute Hillary Clinton said that 1984 was about how people failed to listen to their superiors, I was like, that's it. She's lost.
Oh, good.
That was my favorite book to teach in high school. So I was just like, yep. I was like, all right, that's it. She's done.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, I will say, like, I like even contrasting Harry Potter with something like 1984, which is definitely more political. There's a lot more satire in it and stuff, but it also has like a lot of the truth in it. You have the issue with the press, but you also have like these leaders that are willing to do stupid things or evil things just because they have to.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of the kind of like the devastation that's brought on by bureaucracies. And I honestly, I think this works really well because it is such a British work at heart. I mean, that's something that C.S. Lewis talked about with the Business of Heaven, and how hell is just like a bunch of bureaucrat pencil pushers making tiny little decisions to like it's almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts at that point. And you can kind of see how the corruption doesn't get better necessarily because there are less people, or you see this in like Umbridge, where she has a lot of power at the end in book 5 and then like later book 7,
Yeah.
where she has so much power and she's just this completely horrible person with all this objectively bad like history behind her, and she's still promoted. And I mean, like it is really hard to kind of see that. So
I think though that it kind of makes it a good a good book, a good series, to that that space for people to have their own beliefs, you know. So even though we read these stories and we say, oh, there's Christian themes and there's these traditional values and stuff, she wrote it in such a way that people weren't pushed into that, you know, and could still enjoy the story. Whereas now I feel like a lot of stories are written with an aggressive agenda, where they're telling you need to believe this or you are the bad guy, right?
Yes. Yes. It's death by the narrative.
Yeah.
You live by the narrative, die by the narrative. And I think part of the reason it is so aggressive on some level is because you have to almost make it internet stupid proof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like education has clearly fallen, and not just because I've stopped being a teacher. Explaining things to people as like, you know, like what would be a good example as like why would the history professor like suddenly just get up like as a ghost and continue his job? I mean, people don't understand, like when you're a kid, you don't understand that some adults just work on routine so much that like as an adult, I thought that was funny and hilarious because it's like, oh, hey, I know people that this will probably happen to.
No.
But like, so it's like something that's kind of like cutesy, but like other things about like the mirror of Erised or Ezra, I can't say that.
I
But
think
it's
in the
like
movie
this-
they say Era said.
Era said, okay, that's fine.
We're gonna trust the
movie. Dangerous, but I'll permit it. Like like even the idea of semantics in that case is hard to explain to people. Because I once had like in one of my very, very first like kind of like atheist Christian debates and stuff, my atheist friend was going on and on and on about this book where the scene happened where it was he was talking about how the main character was just sitting there and how he just didn't care about how all these people were just talking and like the meaningless stuff was not. He's like, I really identified with that. And, and I was trying to explain, okay, well, you know, a lot of meaninglessness is a result of alienation and sin, and you're separate from God. And he's like, we were chatting about it online, and like, but hours later, he's like, oh, well, never mind about all that because it was the wrong book. He said it was like Grapes of Wrath originally, and then it turned out to be the Catcher in the Rye book from J.D. Salinger. And I was like, the argument doesn't change because the book changed. The book title changed. That was the only thing that changed in his whole argument. He's like, yeah, just forget about it. And I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? So I don't think I made a lot of inroads in that, but I also don't think that I had a lot to work with there either. So yeah, but like you kind of have to stupid proof things today where it's like, hey, this is the bad guy. The bad guy says these things.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have a hero or a heroine with flaws either, because if you have a heroine with flaws, you're criticizing all women.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. I hate that trope. So I cannot wait till it dies. So.
Yeah. If your female character is ever wrong
Ugly.
or doesn't act first or doesn't talk about things that have nothing to do with the male characters, or she needs help in any way from anybody, it's like you've just you're just building somebody who's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Becomes less and less sympathetic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even sympathetic because I don't like sympathetic characters that much all the time. Like I get tired of those people too. It's like, oh, you're so sad. Your parents died. It's like, I'm sorry, but like I still have to get to work on time.
I've always used sympathetic more, and maybe this is because Fiona Wolf said the same thing, that she doesn't like sympathetic characters.
I also love the Starlight Chronicles end, so I wrote him with that in mind. It's like I don't need sympathy for this character. He's great. You should enjoy watching him suffer.
As more of a like, I understand them, right? Like their behavior makes sense, which is maybe a little bit different than like heartstring tugging pity, you know.
Pity is just so easy. It's so easy to pity somebody, you know, and I think that's kind of like emotional cheapness, especially if you see it so many times. So
yeah. I feel like a lot of the villains in Harry Potter sort of circled back around to being sympathetic in the sort of pity way. You sort of feel bad for Snape, you feel bad for Malfoy at the end, instead of and you want them, you end up wanting them to be redeemed by sort of small actions that they're doing by the end that are good.
I don't know if it's because like I guess Rupert Grint and Malfoy's actor guy, what's Tom Felton, yes, they're like best friends in real life. I don't know if hearing that made me more hopeful for Malfoy's fate or not, but because I read the last chapter of Harry Potter and I think, oh, good, Malfoy's gonna get better, but he knows it's gonna take time and he has a long way to go. And if you know, it's like the journey of 1,000 miles, and at the end of it is your death, and he kind of knows that, you know? So of course, I know like they're on the Pottermore thing. I don't know if either of you have ever been on there.
Oh, it's been a long time.
I know she's released, or Rowling's like released a couple of like follow-up stories too that are supposedly canonical. And I've never read them because I've never been on Pottermore. So
I didn't make it that far. I thought Pottermore was a lot of fun, but I just never got into it.
I feel like, oh, sorry.
Like they, at one point they changed the way that they were doing sorting and like some of the like the features, like getting your wand and stuff like that. I sort of ended up losing interest at that point. So I haven't, and I didn't read The Cursed Child or anything like that either.
I think in my opinion, the more stuff that she puts out, the worse the worse it gets at this point. I think the original series is really good, but the more she tries to add on and the more details that she tries to fill in, it kind of the world building especially really breaks down.
Yeah, it becomes kind of unwieldy.
I'll agree with you there. I feel like so the Deathly Hallows was like Endgame. It's like, oh, that's the end. What a great series was done. And I guess the Cursed Child is like Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. So, no, not that bad.
Well, like there's some actual like serious time travel in the Cursed Child, right? Like,
I don't know.
That was my understanding of it. Is there's some like actual, you know, unlike the really nice fun time travel in Prisoner of Azkaban, where it's like really localized. There's like actual big time travel in The Cursed Child, and in my opinion, I think it's really hard to do that correctly, especially in this sort of bigger, really big, really there's all these consequential characters and stuff. Then you start putting time travel into it, and it just really kind of wrecks it.
Yeah, I do remember that now that you mention it. I remember hearing that it was time travel, and that's probably why I haven't read it, because I'm not a huge time travel fan.
Yeah,
I think you can do it right. There's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it, but it's like balancing on a tightrope.
Yeah.
Yeah. One right way to do it is like have it be funny, and that's kind of how the time travel in Prisoner of Azkaban is. Like most of the time, the little fun time travel bits are kind of funny, right?
Yeah,
and the time travel bits in Prisoner of Azkaban are very fulfilling. You don't know about it up until the end. There's like hints, right? Hermione is becoming more and more ragged, but in the end, they're using it to solve the problem. And so they act, and the problem is solved, and then they act, and the problem is solved.
And it's very localized too, right? It's like it's not like, oh, we saw a bunch of really bad stuff happen, now we actually have to go back and change history. It's like they didn't see the things they changed, so it's like it was changed all along, and they were just doing what they needed to.
And you had kind of like that extra, like, little bit of correspondence with his like prediction of Buckbeak flying away when he was doing the exam with Professor Trelawney.
Yeah,
I just thought that was really smart. That was a really smart kind of foreshadowing. There you go.
I really liked a lot of the stuff with Professor Trelawney. Just things, nice details with ways that different predictions could be interpreted. Just ended up being really, just fun.
Well, I've been a teacher for a long time, and not like a super long time. 10 years is still a long time in teaching. But like at some point, it is kind of funny to think that, oh, your student turns in an assignment where he thinks he's going to die by the end of the year. Oh, that's hilarious. Let's hope it happens. So, there's, and it's at that point, it's like perfectly fitting that she's at Hogwarts, because Dumbledore's always like, hey, this is how you're going to die this year, maybe.
Because it could happen. Well, it's after midnight. Should we wrap up?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for helping me avoid my work. Appreciate it.
Do you want to give one last plug? Find you?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. Am I allowed to put links in your
Oh yeah, please.
You think? Okay.
Don't put anything.
Yeah, don't put any links to porn.
Right.
It's okay. I made a joke once about writing erotica for Jesus. And that's the extent of that kind of juncture. But come and find me on YouTube and Coffee. The Coffee's like a Patreon-like site where you can tip me with coffee runs, and I appreciate those because I'm not supposed to have caffeine. So when I do have caffeine, it's the closest thing that a Christian can come to a drug addiction in good faith. So, and you can find my books on Amazon, Kobo, Google Play. I will say a lot of the stuff is relatively free. My newer stuff isn't, but like my older stuff, like I said, the stuff that I've made enough money on to feel good about myself, it's free. And I'm trying to build up my YouTube channel, so subscribe to me there if you're going to do anything for me. So, I actually just got 300 subscribers today, so I have a special
Nice.
300 subscriber celebrational post coming up soon. And my last post is in honor of my one friend, but it's called Would You Rather. So would you rather? So
Nice.
Yep. And tell me what you would rather do, because it's a bad one. I honestly, it's one of those ones where it's like I couldn't answer this myself. So, and well, thank you guys for having me too. And let me know if you need another guest to make you laugh or cry or
Yeah,
look
thank you
confused
so much
about.
for just saying,
Mm-hmm.
because we love to talk with people, and especially to be able to promote our friends and indie authors. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
I, as an indie author, am thankful for people that will promote me. And if it all involves, like I said, is me avoiding work and showing up and being charming and effervescent, well, then by all means, you know.
All right. Well, you guys have a great night, and we'll see you maybe next Monday.
Yeah, or maybe sooner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We are in the midst of getting our anthology together,
Yeah.
but I have a bunch of days off work that I'm using to get the anthology together. But once that finishes up, we might have some extra time, and yeah, if not before the anthology is out, then definitely after.
Yeah.
We'll
It's got to be one or the other at this point, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And like, to our viewers, sorry about last Monday. David had off of work, and I forgot it was Monday. So
No, I don't think I don't know if we forgot it was Monday.
I forgot it was Monday.
Okay. Well, I mean, we had my sister over, and we were doing other stuff, and I think we were a little bit burned out after the last stream we did and some of the reaction that it got.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want to
It was
speak.
a good break.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Katie, but I was just kind of a little bit done with talking for a while, and I wanted to like just work on stuff. So
Yeah, and we are putting this anthology together. So
yeah, I was working on it as we speak here. I'm doing the cover art for it, and that's coming along pretty well, but just it needs a lot more work. Yeah, so
I'm wrapping up editing the stories, and I'm super excited to share with you guys. It's like really great stuff here. So
yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm very excited about this project.
I love how introverted people are just like, I'm so excited about something, but they're like that's what they say about it, you know? It's like, I know like extroverted people would be like jumping up and down and stuff. So you guys are my kind of people.
I think, yeah, we want to just put it out there. I know my attitude is just, I would rather just put something out than talk about it too much beforehand.
Yeah.
So
like, I really, really want to talk about it, but like they're short stories. So I can't talk about them.
There's not a lot to say without giving stuff away. So.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
See ya.
And bye, everybody.